Hey everyone, how's it going? Let me get my screen share going. Okie dokie, great. So I will be your tour guide today. We will be doing an introduction to Sequencer. And a little bit about me first. I've been using Unreal since 2015 for virtual production, things like that. Just had an athletic background and naturally fell into animation, motion capture, did some R&D, and virtual production really is my favorite thing right now. So here is a teaser just to show you some of the capabilities and show you what we're working toward today. So I've got my project open. Let me play this little sequence. So Yin, she's taunting the poor material mesh, and so he runs her over. And there you go, beginning, middle, end. So clearly you can see that something like this could be used to render out in-game cutscenes, or you could use this for prevising entire films before they even go out on set. But before we get to that, we'll talk about sequencer definitions, go over the UI. We'll think about the workflow because there's so many different ways that you can use level sequences. It's good to think about that first. Then we will make a master level sequence. We'll make shots. We will lay down animation tracks. We'll do a little bit of keyframe animation. We'll edit some of the shots and then render everything out. So you guys don't have this project yet. So if you, let's see here. I've got the Epic Games launcher. If you don't already have yours open, you can click the little icon down here and then go to library and then launch your latest version. I've got 4.25.1. I recommend using the same version just so that we're on the same page, but it's not absolutely necessary. So hit launch. And we'll be using the third person template for this. So here's the project that I made. You guys go to games, hit next, and grab that third person template right here. So third person, hit next. Make sure you have your starter content. So with starter content, and then make sure this is pointed to your Unreal project folder. And then intro to sequencer, or whatever you call it. And then I'm not actually going to make this again, but you guys go ahead and create your project. So I'm going to X out of that, but you hit the green button. And then we're going to add yin. I liked there was a more variety of animations in there. So I'm going to the marketplace and, how many times can we see a guy just crouching in place over and over and over again? So if I type in yin and then go to Paragon yin, and then we are going to add her right there. So add to project, find the project that you've made, and then hit add to project. And it's going to take some time to load and everything. So while you guys are getting caught up, I'll start talking about high level stuff, and then you can get all caught up and then we'll be good to go. So you add to project, I'm not going to. All right. So you will eventually be in the third person example map. Okie dokie. So level sequences. What in the world is a level sequence? So a level sequence is basically the container for your cinematic stuff. And if you don't have one, then if you open up this sequencer, it's blank. So for instance, let's say I am in the finished level right now. If I go to the third person example map, it's pretty blank. It doesn't have any level sequences yet. So notice my sequencer is gray. And if I try to go to my finished level sequence and I click on it, it was made in a different level. So if I try to go into this shot, look at all of the red. The red text is telling you that the object is missing. It lives in another level, but your level sequence is in a different level. So since they're not the same, it doesn't know that it exists, and it's complaining and letting you know, rightfully so. So that's what I mean by level sequences are bound to a certain level. So that's that right there. But if I switch back and I go back to third person example map finished, and I can even look at, let me move this down a little bit. Okay. So here is a bunch of cameras and a bunch of level sequences. And if I open up the second level sequence, notice how it tells you, hey, this actor right here, it's in this shot and that shot and that shot. So it keeps track of all of that. And in your level sequence, you can have different tracks and animated features and all that jazz. So now for the user interface. So up here, you've got your toolbar. You can save, you can find the viewed sequence asset in the content browser. So if I click on that, it jumps me to where it is in the content browser, which is kind of handy. And you can render out this movie to a video, and you can turn on auto key. We can look at that later. And over here, we've got these breadcrumbs. So it's kind of like Hansel and Gretel, and you're leaving breadcrumbs so you know where you are. So if I click inside of the first shot, double clicking in here, it says, hey, you were in the master sequence, but now you're in the first shot, which is one level below. And then if you want to go back up, you just click on the master sequence. And it just helps you navigate and understand where you are. Yeah. And then up here, we've got the add or filter tracks. So if I'm inside of a shot, I can add a shot track, or I can fade the whole thing in and out by doing a fade track, or add a folder for organization, etc. So there's a lot in here. And then you can search Cine, that way I can see all the cameras or what have you. And what's next? We got the timeline. Yeah, okay. So I can scrub this playhead. This area is considered the timeline. And then the tree view. So if I look at, I've got some animation on the matte preview mesh. So I can fold the location, rotation, transform, and unfold these different attributes. So that's why it's called a tree view. And then all the different attributes, you can see them in this tracks area. So here we've got animation laid out in the tracks area. We've got keyframes and playback controls. Okay, so I can hit play, pause. If you don't have hotkeys memorized, this is where you start. I do spacebar all the time, so I'm just whacking the spacebar to play and pause. Right, okay, so level sequence terminology. Level sequences are very similar to Russian nesting dolls. You can have takes, and then you have those takes, they're inside of a level sequence, and then that level sequence, let's say that is a shot, but then in a master level sequence, you can have tons of different shots inside of that master sequence. And then apparently, I think you can even have master level sequences inside of master level sequences. I personally have not worked that way yet. Maybe I will, but clearly you can see it gets really complicated really quickly. So Unreal doesn't know which way you're going to use it. I mean, a level sequence is a level sequence. So you just have to know how to set things up and think about the workflow ahead of time. So to go back, a take, you've got animation data. Maybe you were on set and you got some motion capture for your character, or maybe you were recording a virtual camera, so that could be a take as well. Or you've got this really awesome animator and he keyframed this intense fight sequence for you in Maya or something and then brought it in. All of that is an example of a take. And then shots typically have the character takes and then at least one camera. And then the master sequence usually has a bunch of those shots on a shots track. And then this master layout one, this one's a little different. It's a hybrid that virtual production people have used, where it's a staging ground to block different animations. So let's say they had one take, they liked the beginning of that one, and then they had a second take, and then they wanted to blend the two together. So they get all of that set up, and then they use that to record some virtual cameras, and they have all that information in there, but they don't actually have the shot track in there. So they have to do some work afterward so that they can get the information into the master sequence. But it's nice to even have a place that has it acts as an intermediate. So lots of different ways you can use level sequences. So like I said, we are talking about workflow before we even go back into the Unreal Engine, because there's situations where it's just one person. And if it's just one person, the way you're going to work is very differently than if you have a team and you're divvying up the work and one person is doing animations, another person is doing camera stuff, another lighting, etc. So that is what I mean by linear versus nonlinear. Linear in that one person is doing things sequentially, versus nonlinear when everyone can be doing things at the same time. And then are you using source control? Because if you are, let's say someone checks out a level sequence, everything associated with it gets checked out. So if you wanted to do the camera animation, but someone checked it out, you couldn't, just depending on how you set it up. You could avoid that and you can make a sub scene. And another way you can avoid that is by doing level streaming. And anyway, that's getting very nitty gritty. But what I'm trying to get at is think about how you're working, think about file structure, think about naming conventions. Don't just dive in and then have problems later. So instead of just talking about this and not really knowing what I mean, let me give you some visuals to help. So let's say you have an individual and they are using this linear example. And this, I've been adding some links to the bottom of my slides. So let me click on this one. I like this one a lot. So this is all about workflow considerations. So if you want, you can go back and check out what I mean in more detail. So a linear example, let's say you've got one level sequence and typically you'll have one camera cuts track. You'll put lots and lots and lots of cameras on there, or you could animate one. And there's something that you do called camera binding for that. So there's no animation takes, excuse me, there's no shots track. So there's no shots track, but the animation takes are in there. So you've just got everything crammed into this one level sequence. So if there's one thing that you should take away from this slide, just imagine having all the things crammed into this one level sequence. That's what I mean by linear. So for instance, I've got some alternatives that I worked up for you. So nonlinear. And notice how there's not a shots track. It's just a camera's camera cuts track. And then if I wanted to, let's say this camera didn't exist yet, I can add a camera and it says, you know, add new binding. So that is how you would add cameras to the same camera cuts. And then let's go back and talk about another way of working. So let's say you've got people working on different things, and maybe to prevent someone from not having access to something they need, maybe they use a subscene. So in here, in my shot 3, I used a subscene to add, let's see, let me double click on it. There we go. So I added specifically this animation of the head nod where he's just not taking it and about to go steamroll this other character. So this I specifically did in the subscene. So it just has this one actor, it just has this animation. I go back up to here and notice how this shot, it just has the camera, it has yin, but it doesn't have the preview mat mesh in here. I just have it in this sub scene. So here you go, you've got a master level sequence, and then inside of that you've got a shot, and then inside of that you've got a sub scene. So that's one way you can split things up. And then this is the intermediate way. Let me go back to my master layout alternative. Okay, so no shots track. All it has is, you know, I pretended that this is a virtual camera, so I just called it VC2 and VC3, and I just laid a bunch of keyframes down. So let me click this and hit spacebar. And the camera is moving, and I'm pretending that someone is holding an iPad and doing all of that. So that was one camera. And then here's another camera. So let me click this lock Cine Camera Actor VC3 to selected viewport. Very important button. And then let me hit G. And let's do the up arrow and spacebar. Okay, so not animating yet until this last part. So maybe if I wanted to cut between the two, I could take the information from this and then put it in a separate shot level sequence later. So hopefully that makes sense. So there's no shots, so they just have a bunch of information, but they need to do something with it later. But it's just a great staging ground. So there's no shots track. The virtual cameras require manipulation before adding to a master sequence. But so we've got the linear example, the collaborative sub scenes, and master layout. Those are some alternatives that you can think about. But here is a nonlinear workflow that is pretty simple and straightforward to set up. And I think you'll like this. So we will be doing one master sequence. It's got a shots track. Each shot level sequence will have a camera cuts track with one camera. Okay. So it's your turn, finally. Okay. So enough of the blah, blah, blah from me. And let's get down to business. So just in case you don't actually have this menu over here, you're like, wait, where is everything? Okay, so do the show or hide the sources panel right here. And then third person blueprint, go to maps. And I'm actually going to duplicate this one because I want to have a blank one in the future so I can do this again. So I'm going to hit Control W and I'm just going to call this third person underscore demo. But feel free to stay in the third person example map. That's fine. All right. So I'm going to go in here. I don't really need to save any of that. Okie dokies. here is my new level. And if you're wondering where these colors came from, so you should have, third person BP, third person map. You should have starter content, Paragon Yin, and I can right click on that and go to set color, new color, and maybe do green or something. And if you don't have this sequencer window, kind of important, go to Window, Cinematics, Sequencer, and then that should pull it up for you. So you are in a new level. Ta-da! All right, but we don't have a level sequence yet. But what I like to do, I actually like to add the actors first and then make the level sequence, which just is good at preventing messes. So adding actors to the scene. So let me show you how to do some viewport stuff and some navigation stuff first. So if you don't have two different window panes, you can go to this little triangle and layouts and then hit the two panes right here instead of one. And then this little maximize or restore window will toggle the size of one of your panes. And we'll do some more with this viewport later. But for now, maybe I'll just go back and click this button and go to this non-cinematic viewport. And I am doing the middle mouse scroll forward and backward. I can also do an Alt left click to rotate around. I can also do a right click and press W to move forward, S to move backward, all while I'm still holding the right mouse button. D to go over to the right, A to go to the left, and then let's say I want to zoom to these stairs. I can hit the F button, and then I find that object and zoom in. So I'm going to do a left Alt, maybe I'll middle mouse scroll back, and I'm going to do a right mouse button to look around. So anyway, just play with some of those, and if all else fails, just select something, hit F if anything goes wrong. And I'm going to rebuild the lighting just because I am a perfectionist and that's going to bother me, but you don't have to do this. This has nothing to do with what we're doing. So anyway, but if you're curious, build, you can do build lighting only instead of building everything. Okay, it's thinking. And notice the little preview words are gone. Yay. Okay. So how about we add the yin character first? So click on Paragon Yin right here. And then let's say you don't have these little filter buttons up here. Let me go to filters and reset. And then go to filter. I want a skeletal mesh because there's a lot of folders in there. Sometimes it takes me a while to find it. So this is just what I do to make things a little easier. So take Yin and drag her on top of the platform. And then I can hit F and zoom in. And I can Alt left click to rotate around her. And what I want her to do is to rotate 90 degrees and be facing the little Unreal dude. So somehow I'm already in rotation. If you are not already in rotation, you can hit your W, E, R, and go back to E for rotation. Or you can do some rotation over here in the details panel and just type in 90. There you go. Or you can drag that yourself. So let me type that in again. 90, okay. All right, a middle mouse scrolling to zoom out a little bit because I want to add the Unreal Dude next. So go to Starter Content, and then this time I want a static mesh. So Filters, Static Mesh, and then go and find the Matte Preview Mesh right here. Drag him in. And for this animation, I actually scaled him down 50%. So over here in the Details panel, I'm going to do 0.5, tab, 0.5, tab, 0.5. Okay, and then Alt clicking, Alt left clicking to rotate again. All right, so there we go. I've got my actors. I'm also going to add a cinematic camera too. So over here in Place Actors, you've got your options. If that is not visible, you can do Window, Place Actors, and there you go. So go down to Cinematic and then drag in a cinematic camera actor. I'm not worrying about placing it quite yet. I'm just adding it to the level. I'm going to save all the things, and there we go. So we added actors to the scene. Now we can make a master level sequence. And I'm going to you can click, toggle these filters. I'm just going to unclick them. So third person demo, I'm going up to cinematics. I'm going to add a level sequence. And then as you can see, you could also do this green add new button, go to animation and add a level sequence that way. But we'll do it this way for this demo. So add level sequence. And then if you don't already have a cinematics folder, you can right click, Control Shift, new, and add a folder. I'm just showing you how you can do that. I'm going to get rid of that folder later. Let me right click, delete. Yes. Okay. But you can make a cinematics folder and then a sequences folder or a scenes folder. And then in there, let's do a new folder called demo. Try to make it really easy to find. So in there, let's see here. Yes, in the demo, let's call this master sequence, so ms underscore demo. So cinematics, scenes, demo, and then in there, make a master level sequence called ms underscore demo. Okie dokie. Now let's add a shots track because it's pretty boring right now. So you go over to this green button and we'll add a shot track right here. So plus track, shot track. And still we don't have that much yet. So let's actually add a shot. So plus shot, and you guys don't have any of these yet. So we will do insert shot. So plus shot, insert shot. Okay, so notice inside the demo folder, it made a shots folder and a shots 0010 folder. So I like this naming convention because, you know, the next shot will be called 0020 underscore blah, blah, blah. And so if we want to insert shots later, we've actually got numerical room to do that. And then the suffix right here is used for, you know, take one, take two, etc. So let's hit save. And we have our first shot. Okay. So let's add some actors. A couple different ways you can do that. So let me first go inside of the shot, because if you don't remember what you're doing, you could be tempted to add these actors to your master. And you can work that way. It just depends on, are you doing that linear workflow where you have everything crammed into one level sequence, or are you trying to distribute it out a little bit more? So, shot 01, I double click into you. I'm going to grab my mesh ball and my yin and go to track, actor to sequencer, add current selection. That's one way you can do it. Another way, I'm going to undo that. You can go to your world outliner and you've got these two things selected. You can just drag it in. Just drag it in. Whew, there it goes. Or if I undo, I can do one at a time. So here's my mesh guy, and then add that. Or add, let's go down to the yin. So, and then one more time, just delete those. So by now you should have these actors in here. And actor to sequencer, add current selection. Okay. I'll stop beating a dead horse. So there's our actors. And trying to decide if I want to go ahead and add the camera now or not. It doesn't really matter. I'll wait on the camera for now, but you could go ahead and add that if you wanted to. So let's focus on the animation. So Yin, she's got a couple animations. So the first one, animation, do this little plus animation. So make sure underneath Yin, plus animation. And then I'm going to type in emote squash bug. Emote squash bug, that's right. And if my playhead had been over here to the side, then this would have come in right here at frame 34 or whatever, wherever my playhead was. But if you do that, that is okay. You can just drag it over. It's not hard. And then let's use some more hotkeys to make sure that the next animation actually comes in at the end of this track right here. So I have a handy dandy hotkey slide at the very end. So see this comma and period for next and last keyframe. So if I do comma, it goes back to 0. If I do period, it goes to the end of the animation track. And that is where I want the next one to come in. So again, comma, period, line up your playback at the end, hit the plus animation, and then we're going to add the death animation. And oh no, it's hard to see. How do I zoom out? So if you do the middle mouse, let's see, control middle mouse or shift middle mouse, you can kind of move around that way. You can click this bar down here, or you can adjust the handles manually. Or if you hit the home button, then it will kind of center on your playback range. So I'm going to, let's move this over here. Okay. But the playback range starts at the green line and it ends at the red line. And that's too short for our entire animation sequence. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fix it by going to the master level sequence first. So it is, I'm going to hit the period button. It is 150 frames. If I go inside here, I think I need it to be, hit the period a couple times, 236. So the playhead is at 236. Going back to the master, I'm going to use another hotkey. So these brackets are hotkeys for setting the playback start and end to the current time. So if I do the bracket, the right bracket, then the red jumps. So let me undo that so you can see it one more time. So the playback is at 236. If I do the right bracket, it jumps to the playhead. And then let me extend this shot all the way to the end. so that when I go in here, and then I need to adjust the playback range in here too. So you can try hitting the bracket. If the bracket doesn't work in here, you can just drag it yourself. It's tedious, but it still works. So I'm control middle mousing to zoom in and then bringing it over, making sure it lines up. And then I can hit the home button. And now everything is visible. We've got the playback range in the right spot. That's good. Okay. Now I'm doing everything in this first shot because what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this shot over and over again so that I don't have to set this up 4 times, 50 times, 2 times, however many shots that we have. So how about we look at this? So we don't have a camera in here, so I can still zoom around. Let's just see what she does, because I know what she looks like, but maybe you forgot. So let's hit the spacebar. So she's taunting, smush, and she gets knocked over. So there's that. But we don't have this guy animating yet. So let's fix that. So in the tree view, I've got the transform. Let's just talk about different ways to set keyframes. I can hit the S key and let's hit the S key. So I got this in the playhead. I got this clicked. Let's look at that. I'm just doing a right click to change my viewport. So I hit S and there's some keyframes, and that keyframed everything in the location, rotation, scale. I click on this over here, everything. Maybe I move the playhead. I hit enter. That's another way. If I don't like those keyframes, I can left marquee drag over them and then hit delete. So that's back to how we were. So I can also turn auto key on, and we'll do that in a second. But I want to take the playhead to frame 150 because I've done this a couple times. And you can click in this little button area right here and type in 150, and it manually adjusts the playhead to a specific frame. And I want my first keyframe to be there. And maybe I'll do the location and the rotation. So notice how I'm also selectively just keying with these little circles right here on the left. So add a new keyframe at the current time. And I did that for location and I did that for rotation. And I can expand that and there it is. And then maybe by frame 175. So 175, enter. And then I'm going to left click, alt rotate, and maybe middle mouse button scroll out a little bit. Okay, so maybe at 175, I'm going to hit W to get my gizmo to translate, and then I'm going to move it over, get it off of the platform, and then let's key all of the location transforms. So that's that one right there. And notice this little blue trail. So if I scrub, it's moving. Yay. Okay. And then I'm going to hit the period button to go to that. And then let's say 4 frames later, I want the ball to just Acme cartoon physics fall to the ground. So I'm hitting W. I'm going to hit F to zoom in, and then I zoomed out a little bit with the middle mouse scroll, and then I'm Alt left clicking to rotate a little bit. Okay, so let me click back in the sequencer and make sure I'm at 175. And then another hotkey is the stepping forward and backward 1 frame with the left and right arrows. So I'm in the sequencer, that's active. If I do the right button, let me click one more time. Okay, all right, so I'm doing the right button, right button, right button, right button, or you could just type in 179. Lots of ways to do this. And I'll pull this down and let me zoom out a little bit, or I'm just kind of changing my right click rotation. And then let me hit S. And then we've got it moving. Another way I could have done that is, let me Control Z. Let me go to frame 179, enter. And what if I do auto key right here? So this little diamond with a key in it, auto key, if I move this down, then it will key just what was changed. So I hit spacebar, pew, okay. And then let me navigate out. I'm going to hit G to get rid of all the extra icons. So what I want to do next is make sure that when this hits, it's actually at a reasonable spot in comparison to her animation, right? So spacebar. Let me just do frame by frame. So let's go in there and see if we like that. Now, and I'm going to have her having some geometry going through her. It's not going to be perfect, but I think I'm okay with the timing of that reaction. That's the main thing I'm looking for. But if I wasn't, for instance, I could click on this and let me make sure that's the right axis. So if I click on this, I hit W, the X axis. Okay. So if I go to the curve editor, you could go down to transform, location, X, and then you could get this little tangent handle right here, and then you could change the timing of the animation. So if I brought this over here, maybe I drag on this one, and notice how it's changing the speed of the travel. I'm going to undo that, but that is an option if you needed it. So notice how the curves and the sequencer are two different windows. So if you get lost, just go back and try and find the sequencer window. Okay, so we have animation. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So added animation, we adjusted the playback range, did some keyframe animation. I could adjust the speed of her death. Let's see if I hit spacebar. She seems a little slow. So what if I right click on the death animation and I go to properties? I could change the play rate to be, I don't know, I don't want it to be 200%, maybe 50% faster, so 1.5. Let's see what that does. We'll have to change the playback range, but we'll deal with that. So I hit play. And let's see if we still like how that looks. Let me scrub through here. I think that's okay. So I'm going to hit the period button and then go to my master sequence, hit the bracket button, and then I'm going to adjust the length of this shot as well. And then double click in the shot, and then let me make sure that this playback end is also here. Let me zoom in, double check. Doink. Okay. And then maybe one more thing we can add to this Tasmanian devil of Unreal dude. Let's also add some spinning animation. So period to adjust my playback to get it on the same spot. And then I'm going to keyframe the yaw. And let's do that by this little button right here, little yellow guy. Okay. And then I'm going to hit the period button. And maybe by then I want it to have gotten to negative 2000. something really crazy and fun. So spacebar, whee! Okay. So let's hit save. Let's save all of the things. File, save all, Control-Shift-S. So we've done animation. Let's make sure we've got our camera in here too. So there's our Cinecamera. What if I just drag it in from the World Outliner? So I just went up here, dragged it, and notice how we now have a camera cuts track. We're inside of the shot 001, and maybe I want to pilot it and get a better location. So this is where this double viewport thing actually comes in handy. So you can click this maximize restore viewport thing to open up the other one. Now, if this is not a cinematic viewport for you yet, go to perspective, and then maybe it looks like default. You can go down here and click cinematic viewport. Now, if you want to pilot a specific camera, you could manually go over here and click Cinecamera Actor, etc. Or let's go back to default and then go back to cinematic, and maybe it doesn't know what camera it needs to be yet. Then that's where this button right here, Lock Cinecamera Actor 1 to selected viewport, is very useful. So we're kind of looking through the ground in a weird spot. So it's selected, and you can use your WASD navigation over here. So let me maybe right click W, I don't know, I'm doing the S to kind of zoom out. And I could, maybe rotate around. I'm just doing Alt left drag right now because maybe I want to see her from behind over here. I want to see her pointing. Or maybe I'm just doing the Alt click again, and then right click, W to zoom in. Maybe I want to see her pointing at us directly. And then I'm going to do Alt left click to rotate a little more. Now let's say that's, not quite what I want. What I like about this setup is I can zoom out over here. I can click here, and then if I want to do a smaller change, because, I'm not always the best driver in this Unreal Engine, so I can just use the gizmo right here and then do some fine tuning right here. And maybe I'll zoom in a little bit and then drag over or something like that. But it's a little fuzzy. So I like the draw debug focus plane, but for some reason I have better luck if I use this eyedropper first. So let me rotate. Let me click on Miss Yin right here. And then if I do the draw debug focus plane, you can see where things are in focus. So I can drag this forward or backward. Maybe I want all of her and not just I could just have her finger in focus, but I'll have all of her. And then when I'm done with that, I can unclick that and hit save. So that's one shot. If I go back to master, that's one shot. But what I can do is from here, I'm in the master sequence, I can right click, duplicate shot, and notice how it's trying to put it into the wrong folder. So let's make a new shots 0020. So right click, no, not rename. Right click, new folder, shot 0020. And then the naming actually makes sense. We've got shot 2, take 1, save. So I have 2 thingies in here, 2 shots, and they're stacked on top of each other for now. So the first one we've got over here, maybe the next shot, let's go inside the second shot. Now notice it's still pointing to the Cinecamera Actor 1. And over here in the sequence section of the World Outliner, it tells you Cinecamera Actor 1 is being used in the first and the second shot. And you can keep using the same camera over and over again. It won't get confused. It's actually kind of cool and prevents you from having to add a ton of cameras if you don't want to. I mean, if you're using a ton of virtual cameras, then that's going to happen. It's fine if you have a lot of cameras, but you don't have to. So Cinecamera Actor, we are in shot 2, so I can click this button again and I can operate this camera. So maybe I want to rotate around. See, notice how it's like woo, rotating around. And maybe I want to rotate this that way. And then maybe I want to rotate it down and move back with the S key. And let's see, that is just way too high. So I'm hitting W, moving that down, trying to zoom in. Maybe I'll nudge back just a little bit. And maybe rotate down a little bit. Woo, hello. Control Z. That's okay. All right. Maybe I'll try to do another rotation. I'm inside of a wall. That's great. Okay, right click, W, move forward. There we go. And then I'll get there eventually, guys. I told you I'm not the best driver. Okay, so now we can see the reaction of the Unreal dude. So let's see here. So we've got our camera inside of shot 1. And I'm wondering if my camera manipulation got saved or not. And if not, then I'll just do it again. That's okay. Okay. Yeah, let me do that again. So E, you get lots of navigation practice today. All right. And then I am right on top of that sucker. Okay, I'm heading to S. And zooming in. Okay, there he is in all his glory. Let me maybe, maybe the first shot goes there and the second shot's here. And then this button right here, lock viewport to shots. There we go. Okay. Yeah, these buttons are super important. So here we are in the first one, you, pointing at you. So let's just look at that. Okay, so I did the up arrow, space bar. Okay, don't like the timing of that. So maybe instead what I want to do for this shot is maybe this first shot goes on longer. So let's try that to point. Okay, so we need a shot that maybe changes when she's doing the stomping. So I'm going to shot 2 and let's do that. Just double checking, guys. Okay. So I'm in shot 2 and maybe I look down or something. I zoom out a little bit. Let's just see what that looks like. So you, and then maybe right as she's doing the stomping, maybe that's when I cut, because it's fun to cut on an action. So, boink. All right, that needs to be locked to the viewport for the whole shots. So let's try again. Hit play. Let's play it again. Okay. Let's try a little different timing. Okay, that feels a little more natural. And clearly you can see that we can keep finessing and keep finessing. Okay, so let's duplicate this shot, and the next one will show the Unreal Dude's angry reaction, and then the last one will actually see the aftermath. So if I duplicate this shot, let's make a new folder, shot 0030. And sometimes the automatic naming is perfect. Sometimes you gotta tweak it and double check. So there we go, shot 3, take 1. And let's go in here and make sure we're piloting that camera in this shot. And then now I'm going to rotate around and get a little closer to this guy. Okay, that was so much easier. So I'm going to move this and we'll try, I don't know, that for now. Make sure this unlock viewport / lock viewport shots is working your way. So boom, boom. Yeah. So as she's pulling back, we see the reaction. I think that's okay. And then one more. Let's do duplicate shot again. New folder. Change the name. Save. So now we have this guy down there. So I'm going to move this over here. And eventually I'm going to make this all just one shots track, but at first I like to have them all splayed out. So we've got this one, and then, I don't know, maybe 2 here or something, but we'll go inside of this shot 4. And I will pilot that camera. And for this one, I'm going to rotate around and zoom out. Maybe move that up a little bit. Okay, let's try that. See how that works. So here, and fix the viewport. Spacebar. Cut. Reaction. And so I like that we see the ball go out of the frame and then boom, but maybe this shot could be a little shorter. Maybe to there or something. And I'm just control middle mouse to zoom in a little bit so that now we see the reaction. So I'll hit play. So I'm okay with that. So what I can do is I can collapse this. I can take shot 2 and move it up. Take shot 3, move it up, and then I can cut this, move this over here. I've just been dragging things. You could, for instance, you could do a control slash. So if I do the period button or the comma button, so this is where I want to cut, I could do, I believe it's control slash. Let's double check. Yeah, cut asset at current time. There you go. So control /, that cuts that. And then you could also properties, look at the properties. There's different, oh yeah, there's different takes too. I can show you that in a second. So let me delete that, move it up here, and hit save. Yes, save all the things. And I think I have a gap right here. I didn't mean to do that. Oh let's just move it over. Notice I don't have the shaking of the head animation, but that's okay. Let me double check where we are, because I can show you a couple other things. It's been about an hour-ish, and I imagine, let's see here. So the camera, adding the camera cuts. Notice how when I added the camera, I didn't use this button right here. I've run into some buggy issues with this toolbar button. So just to be safe, just drag your camera in or add it in this way, but this button is not always the friendliest for some reason. The camera goes missing randomly. Okay, so here's our demo. Hit up and spacebar, boink, doink. All right, I'm okay with that. Save for good measure. Now render this movie to a video. So video sequence AVI. We don't have any audio this time. 1920 by 1080 is a popular resolution. I'm just going to keep it at 1280 by 720. I bumped up the compression to 100, and this shows you where your files will go. So if I hit capture movie, and also there's a write edit decision list, and you can take that and use it in Premiere. For instance, if you don't like editing in here as much, maybe you've got a special workflow, then you can use that, go to Premiere, and then pop right back in here again. So let's hit capture movie, save all the things. All right, so you saw the little clip. And open capture folder. So here's our demo. I'm going to double click on that. And there she is. And ooh, okay. Notice the importance of the playback range. Let's go and fix that. So I'm zooming in here. And there's a discrepancy, isn't there? See, the two red lines are not the same. So let me go to shot 4 and pull this and make sure this shot is actually all the way to the end. So we're at 209, and this thing ends a little after 209. So what if I drag this over and then I drag this over? That should be better. Okay, so little nitpicky things right there. I'm going to save. And then another thing that I haven't shown you guys yet, I'm bouncing back and forth. So go back to finished and go to demo finished. Notice how in this first shot, I've actually got a second take. So if I go to the master sequence, notice it's the second take. If I right click and do takes, I can switch it to the first take, and let's see what that looks like. So up arrow, spacebar. So it's a different angle versus right click, take number 2. So that's something that's really cool with this naming system. And then if I go in my animated dude, I can look at the curves, and let's go to the rotation, yaw, for instance. So here's my little head bob thing. I'm going to hit F to zoom in and then middle mouse to zoom out. And let's say I wanted this to be really jaggy. I could right click on here And I believe I can right click and change the kind of tangent. So if I want it to be really like a sawtooth jagginess, I hit linear. It's more of like a versus a smooth, wavy animation. So you can do that in the animation, the sequencer curves menu, or you can right click and change it from the sequencer itself. So that's what it was. And we could make it linear if we wanted to. So we can change the curves, we can change the key type. Also, let's say we had an object that, maybe she actually squishes something when she's doing her foot stomp thing. So in, maybe this one right here in this shot, what if we added, I don't know, a cube or something really basic? We could add a cube right here. We can make it teeny tiny, maybe 0.1, tab 0.1, tab 0.1. And so there it is right there. And so maybe when she squishes it, it disappears. So that is not an object that is persistent the whole time. So if I add that, let's add the cube. I can convert it to a spawnable object. And notice how the icon changes right here. So let's see here. So it's spawned, and that's actually keyframeable. So it spawns right here. Because, maybe in the previous scene, we're not close enough, we can't see it. So I scrub through, it's here. And then maybe after a couple smearings with the foot, it's not there anymore. So, but I need to key that. So let's do unspawned and key it. And then maybe even back here, we'll see if it'll let us do that. And then say it's spawned, but it's only for the duration of that shot. So if I want it to appear earlier, then I need to have it in this shot as well, which makes sense. So just to make things look nice, I'm going to move that right there. So there it is. So smushy, smushy, it disappears. And then we've made the Unreal dude mad and he just shakes his head. And there you go. Okay. So we could render this out again if we wanted to. But let me double check. We rendered that out. We've got our last thing. We've got our hotkeys that we've been talking about. We've got some other trimming shortcuts for you. Also this Control L right here. So let's say I'm in shot 1. And then instead of clicking this button on and off, I could do, let me get the playhead in the right spot. There we go. I could do Control L. And then that toggles it as well. But visually, it's easier to see me clicking it with the mouse. So I think we're at a good stopping point. And at this point, we do some questions and just see how you guys are doing and if you needed me to repeat anything or things like that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope you're excited to start your own projects. And signing off for now. Find the button. Okay, stop.